Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is about the holidays because, there's so much food and you're seeing family, and when you have an autoimmune disease, sometimes that can add an additional level of stress, especially if your family doesn't know or if you can't eat a lot of the foods. So here are my recommendations for those that have an autoimmune disease when you're at a family gathering. It's not specific to the holidays, but during the holidays, that's when you really hang out with your family. So let's just get into it. The first thing I want to talk about is the food. So I have Crohn's disease and I try to remain paleo-ish. So sometimes I'll have dairy and sometimes I have legumes, but for the most part, I really do try to just eat meat and vegetables. That's what my body functions best at. And I know that when you have a restricted diet, when you go to somebody else's house, it's kind of difficult because sometimes you feel like you're imposing, where you can only eat certain things, so you need to make sure that the hostess has it, and it adds additional stress for you because you're worried about what you can't eat and if they will have what you want. But also I kind of feel guilty sometimes because when I go over to family houses or my friends' houses, they will typically make an additional plate for me, and I don't really want to put them to work, but they do it out of the kindness of their heart, and sometimes I feel a bit guilty for giving them more work just because I have Crohn's disease. I hope that makes sense. So the holidays only come around once a year and they're kind of compact. You have Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, Christmas, whatever religion you celebrate, and there's always so much food and everybody goes home with leftovers. Honestly, I really do think you should indulge. I understand that there's all these different diets and doctors might say, like, be careful about certain things, but if you are eating healthy and like your diet almost every single day, when you have a family gathering, I really do think you should indulge because that only happens just a few times. For me, I only see my family maybe like a big group of us, maybe like once or twice during December. All of my family is spread out throughout California, so it's kind of difficult for us to get together. But when we do, it's typically all Filipino food. There's all these different desserts, and my favorite's cheesecake, which is high in dairy and high in sugar, which I've told you guys that maybe you should stay away from, but it's cheesecake. It's my absolute favorite. It's Christmas, it's the holidays. I'm just gonna surrender and eat it. In order to indulge, here are a few of my tips. We typically always go to my aunt and uncle's house for Christmas Eve. They are not paleo at all. I always prefer to call and figure out what they're going to have and see what I can make a meal out of based off of what everybody is going to bring. But then I also bring something myself. My mom always makes lasagna. We try to do gluten noodles, and then with dairy, and typically when it's like gluten and dairy combined always make me super sick, but if I can get one of them gluten-free or dairy-free, that's typically fine for me. And so I'll have gluten-free lasagna with like turkey or ham or whatever. So I'll typically be able to figure out what meals I can make beforehand by reaching out to them and then figuring out what I can bring myself. We've always had it kind of beaten into us that we have to have 3 meals a day minimum. Some people go by like the 5 or 6 meal rule, but the thing is that when you have Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, those rules really don't apply to you. Your gut is doing its own thing. It really does not care what anyone else has to say. So when you are having like a big family gathering, you can do intermittent fasting after. So that means like you can eat as much as you want, and you're gonna have to pay the price, except if you do intermittent fasting where essentially you just don't eat for like, I don't know, 12 hours minimum. I would say that's typically, I go for like 12 to 16. It allows your body to fully digest what's in it before you adding something else to the mix. And so this will just help the digestion process, and then it will It's not going to help you like remove calories or not suffer the consequences of eating dairy or whatever is a trigger for you, but it's essentially just going to help you so you're not going to pay for it for weeks on end. It will kind of just do all the digestion that it needs to do, and then you can start fresh. Another thing is that if you are going to have family gathering in the afternoon, maybe for your lunch and breakfast, you go pretty light and substitute one of them to a all veggie smoothie. All of the fiber is already broken up, so it's going to be easier for you to digest, and you're getting your healthy food for the day, so you don't really need to worry about what they're going to serve. So, you know, paleo essentially for me is just meat and vegetables. It's just what I try to do. But if it's going to be like a bean casserole or, you know, something where there isn't much veggies, then I've already taken care of my vegetable intake for the day by having a smoothie. So I don't really need to worry that much about it when I'm at my family's house. Also, one thing is that, you know, I'm all about enjoying food. I think that food should be enjoyable, and I think the holidays when I get to be with my family, I just indulge. I'm all about it. But if that isn't for you, then don't worry about it. You could absolutely just not eat. If you know that your family doesn't eat the lifestyle or diet that you prefer, you don't really need to eat when you go and hang out with your family. You can have your own meal before you leave your house and then just hang out, maybe like drink whatever you would like to drink at the party and still socialize, but you don't really have to eat anything that they're serving. If anyone gives you a hard time about it, then that's kind of their issue, not yours. So you're not affecting anyone by not eating. I personally don't look at it as disrespectful. I understand that you're going to somebody's house and they've done all this work for making food for everybody, but for me, I have a very large family, and so we'll cram like 50 people into a house. So if I'm not eating, there's just more food for everybody else. But again, that's just my take on it. You do whatever you feel is more comfortable. Another thing with family gatherings is that if you're not close with family, it can kind of be very stressful in the sense that they might not know that you're sick. I think the first reaction that some people get when they have an autoimmune disease is immediately bombarded with uneducated advice. So for example, when I was being diagnosed with Crohn's disease, something I got all the time was that I need to do a juice cleanse, or that I eat too much fast food, or I'm celiac. It's not actually Crohn's, it's celiac disease. And so there's kind of just ignorance I don't really want to deal with. Not saying that every single person in my family would have that reaction, but it's kind of just easier to avoid it because I don't really talk to them that much anyway. Another thing is that when you have a really big family gathering, it's very rare that you're going to have an intimate conversation about your mental and physical health. That's just really not how it goes. You know, you might have 20 people or more in a room when you're not going to talk about how, you know, you are dealing with depression and that these are the medications you're taking and this is how you're trying to improve your life. That's really more of a one-on-one conversation. And so if people start asking questions, I personally am fine with just shutting it down. My answer is, you know, I would love to talk to you about it, but this really isn't the appropriate time or place that I would like to have this intimate discussion, and just leave it at that. And so it's up to you if you want to make plans with that person, and you guys can go have coffee, or it could just be you guys talking, but essentially you can just shut it down. It's not, you're not hurting anybody by not eating or whatever. It's really none of their business. And just because they're blood relatives, you don't have an obligation to talk about your like intimate personal life to an uncle you might only see once a year. To kind of show how I'm perfectly fine being secretive with my Crohn's disease, I was diagnosed 5 years ago, and I really think that no one has a clue other than the one or two people that my mom has told in her family. When I was first diagnosed, you know, granted I was in a flare, then that's how I was diagnosed. It was pretty difficult for me to go out and handle like a 3-hour drive to see family and just talk to people really about it. But now it's been over 5 years and I've been completely fine with just leaving it. I don't really need to discuss this with my aunts and uncles and cousins. I'm not It's not going to affect them in any way, and I don't really owe them anything. And if I have a really good relationship with some of my cousins, I'll absolutely talk to them about it, but that's on my terms. Another thing is that whenever I go to family gatherings, I will have an agreement with my parents that we just don't talk about it, that we don't bring it up, and I'm fine with leaving it at that. So I hope this video helps in some way when facing family and the holiday food, you know, especially when you have issues with eating. Going to somebody else's house can be a bit stressful or nerve-wracking because you don't know what they're going to serve. So just be proactive and reach out to them, see what's available, and if there's nothing that's going to work for you, either bring something yourself or whatever. I hope that my take on telling family somewhat helps you. You know, I truly believe that this is your personal journey, and whatever is going on with you, I hope that you have family that you can seek comfort in. But if you don't, and you just feel like the conversation isn't going to go exactly how you want it, or you're not going to have the appropriate environment to discuss whatever's going on, then you don't have an obligation to talk about it just because you're with them. So I hope this video was somewhat helpful for you guys. Remember that you are never alone, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.